Hey guys, how you doing? Nice to see you here on a Thursday afternoon. It's tax day, sort of, right? I think if we were going to have an episode that was fun, drama free, then we should pick tax day. I think so. Um, Speaking of taxes and spending money, you're going to save a bunch of money if you talk to my buddies at Five Star Guitars. They sponsored this show. If you click the link below, you're going to save 15% by using that promo code. So go to fivestarguitars.com/all access live. Use the promo code of all access 15. You're going to save 15% off all the merchandise you see there. Plus, it's based in Oregon. So if you're anywhere else and you're paying sales tax, buy your stuff from Five Star and you're going to save a bunch of money. Let them know I sent you. There's also an opportunity to get lessons from incredible pros like Jennifer Batten, who happens to have her Guitar Cloud Symposium happening this next week. Tonight is the deadline to sign up for a discount on guitarcloudsymposium.com. This symposium is a few days of interactive, hands-on workshops with the greatest guitarists in the world. She's got Steve Lukather as a special guest for the featured artist at the end of the symposium. She's had Dweezil Zappa, Steve Vai, other pros in the past. If you go today to guitarcloudsymposium.com, you're going to save some money, and you got to let her know I sent you because I need to be worth something here. So go and get lessons from Jennifer. And perhaps, if you're lucky, you're going to get lessons from incredible pros like my next guest. I talked about yesterday that my next guest is this incredible keyboardist from back east. Well, sort of back east. He's Spokane, Washington, but it's east of where I'm at right now. If you haven't seen him, you're going to love this guy. I'm going to just give you a tiny taste of what this guy does. Okay, so one moment. Check this out. This is a little session he did with Curtis Salgado. All right, just dig it. Okay, that's all I get to share with you because you know what? I just got the note that I'm actually getting blocked on YouTube right now for copyright infringement. So awesome. Those bots already got me. My next guest is Brian Harris. Let's talk about
so fast.
the bots. Yeah. Well, you know what?
Dude.
Your fingers were so fast. That was a 15-minute solo condensed into yep. There's a little flag.
If that was the Hail Mighty Caesar, I actually composed that solo so I could do it.
That is the Hail Mighty Caesar. And you want to, well, maybe perhaps after we talk a little bit.
Yeah, we'll do it a little bit later.
You can do it live, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for being here, buddy. How are you?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Kev. I appreciate it.
I'm excited. It's been a little bit of time that you and I have got to talk in person.
Yeah, I think the last time was at the Rush Zeppelin thing at Billy Blues.
That's right. Yeah, it was.
It wasn't Rush. It was just Zeppelin.
Well, Ramble On had played, and the guys from Ramble On did that Rush tribute. So we went up there, and Steve.
Was that the thing? Because I was. What's the singer's name?
Rich Ray.
Yeah, Rich.
Yeah.
So he was, because I started doing this Rush thing with Jeff Langston, and then Rich came in, and then like it was kind of just a fun thing for the drummer to do. He's a question drummer, but he's like a doctor or something.
Right. Yeah.
And so it was just kind of this fun thing. And then when it became like when Rich came in, it was like, oh, this is going to be a real thing. Right. And I don't have the analog synth set up to be able to cover it, so I got the boot.
Oh, what?
Yeah,
you got the boot. That doesn't happen to Brian Harris ever. Yeah. Were you a big Rush fan when you were growing up?
I had a poster on my wall in high school.
Yeah, that counts.
But I listened to Moving Pictures thousands of times, probably. Yeah. But that's kind of it.
Was that the breakthrough record for you?
Yeah, but it was kind of also the only one. I mean, I liked the other stuff. And in hindsight, hearing some of the other stuff, I'm like, why didn't I get into that record? Or why didn't I get into that record? Like, I remember when Signals came out, it was just like, meh. But now I'm like, damn, that's a fucking great record.
It's maturation, right?
Yeah.
Well, what were you into in those days?
Oh, in those days I was into, well, I guess the only thing I wasn't into that I'm into now was jazz, but kind of everything.
Okay. Yeah. You were in Spokane, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Spokane. I was born in California, but only was there for like a year.
Okay. Yeah. So as a Washingtonian, I'm not trying to age you, but I was just thinking we had this conversation before that you grew up with Miles Kennedy, right?
Well, I went to school with Miles.
Yeah. Okay.
and I didn't know when I met you because our kids went to the same school. That was the first time I'd ever heard of the Mayfield Four.
Oh, okay.
And that was when there were rumors that he was going to be getting together with John Paul Jones and Jimmy Page.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I was like, fucking Miles sings?
Yeah. Yeah, because he was a wicked guitarist.
He was just a guitar player. We went to
Right.
Spokane Falls Community College together, and he just played guitar, and he was a crushing guitar player
Yeah.
and the sweetest guy, and everybody loved him. But fucking singer for Slash, come on!
Right. Yeah.
I didn't even know he sang. I had no idea.
Yeah, and my favorite singer in the business, actually. So
Dude, so good.
it's ridiculous, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, the small town guys coming out and doing some impressive things. You've been that guy, and not to sound like I'm doing a Barbara Walters interview, but tell me a little bit about your foray into professional musicianship.
Well, I started. My first pro gig was in Spokane, the top 40 band called Rendezvous, and that was back 88. I was 19.
If there are folks in the chat that don't even know what he considers a pro gig, you're considered a professional if you get paid. Okay, so that's what Brian's talking about, right? He was making money doing cover gigs, right?
Yeah,
Rendezvous.
yeah. I was 19. It was, that was back in the day when you'd set up on Monday and tear down on Saturday night.
Right.
It was 6 nights a week.
9 to 2.
So there were 3 clubs in Spokane that were like 6 nights a week, and JJ's Lounge, All Fall Down. Joe Brash is the guitar player for them. They're a fantastic band. Miles sat in with them all the time. Okay. And they would do Tuesday through Sunday at the Sheraton, and all the other clubs had Sundays off.
Okay.
So all the bands would go to see All Fall Down on Sundays, but Monday was their night off. So if we were playing at Casablanca, which was the Mexican restaurant with the bar, literally across the parking lot from the Sheraton, we'd play Tuesday through Sunday. No, Monday through Saturday. No, Tuesday through Sunday. And then, because Monday was our night off.
Okay.
So they'd have Mondays off, and then we'd play on Monday for one night at JJ's, and then they'd come back and start all over. But we played Missoula and Boise. There were just a ton of clubs that you'd have a 1 week residency and just do the whole Northwest circuit.
Let's talk.
And it was like, I think it was kind of the same money I make now playing in bars, honestly, like $300 a week or something. But I was 19 and didn't have any expenses. I was still living at home because I was planning on moving back east. And
I
did that for about a year and a half.
Let's talk about that circuit for a little bit, because we had the same circuit. Right?
That's right.
I was in Bozeman. I was doing the Missoula gigs, and Gatsby's was the place we played in Spokane.
Gatsby's, yeah, man.
And but the thing I remember about those days, and we can laugh about this, the band houses. Not the cocaine, no, because dude, at that point I was square and straight. Well, not square, but I was super straight, right? I knew that I had genetic predisposition to have drug and alcohol problems. So, and I was just prior to doing that circuit, I was doing the ski club or the ski resort gigs with like this all white reggae band, the straightest, squarest reggae band ever. But these dudes were wake and bake guys that drank so much on the gigs, and they were falling down, just sloppy. Yeah. And at that point, I was all about musicianship and precision, that went out the door. But, back then I was really into that. And I would drive to these gigs, and they were so hammered, and I'm thinking, I'm going to die on the way to the gig, and I'm not even drinking,
Yeah.
But by then, I was like, man, I'm going to show them I can rock without having to get loaded, but those gigs, the thing I was going to talk about were the band houses. If you did those residencies and you had the band house, okay, did you, there were wild and crazy times, and a lot of places didn't want bands and hotels at that point, right?
Yeah. The only ones that we did with an actual band house, there was a place, it was in Montana, but I can't remember which spot it was. Was there a place called the Carousel?
Yeah, that's in Missoula.
Missoula. Okay, so we used to play the Carousel, and we stayed at a hotel for that one. There was another place, and it was this little. I think it technically was a hotel, but it was like this beat up turn of the century building downtown, like an Old West kind of town.
Was it Butte? Was it?
It probably was Butte.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, brick
Um,
thing.
but I feel like that was kind of a hotel too. So we
Okay.
didn't really do the band houses. I think maybe we
Yes.
had, I don't know, maybe we had a bigger budget or something, but
Yeah. We don't need to get into that then. I'll save that for one of the other people that had to trudge through those horrible
I
times.
feel
But
like what was the Hump and Hannah's in Boise? Did you play Hump and Hannah's?
no, we did Greenies, but that was later. We did the Ritz in Boise and in Pocatello. Oh my God,
Okay.
bringing back memories, man. That was
Yeah.
1989, 90, 91, 92. That was that era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I left I left the band in August of 89
Okay.
and took some classes for a year. And then I moved to Boston in fall of 90.
That was the Boston connection because I talked about back east, and I know you've got a Patriots Seahawks affinity, so we can get
Yeah.
into
And
that.
Red Sox Mariners too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I missed that one. That's
Baseball is kind of all I care about anymore. Yeah.
okay, man. Speaking of band houses and fun gigs, JD is here. JD, I just saw him in the chat saying that he loves your beard and good to see you cats
Ah,
here. So not all of our chats are displaying here. So if we miss you guys, then I apologize. But it's nice that JD's here, and
nice, man.
he probably misses seeing you play as much as I do.
Oh, thanks, man. I miss
Ooh.
seeing all you guys in person, dude.
Yeah, well, you're starting to gig again, right? You got some shows that are starting to happen.
Well, I've got the only gigs on the book right now are Soul Vax has started to book some stuff in late summer and fall.
Okay,
Um,
okay. Are you teaching?
no, the church. I'm music director at New Thought Center for Spiritual Living in Lake
Okay,
Oswego,
nice.
and that's been the work that's kept me going through the pandemic. It's like why I have microphones on my piano all the time now because we're doing it all from home,
The Zoom thing, not the
and
same.
I think we're getting ready to go at least back to the location in Lake Oswego and do some outdoor things with limited vaccinated capacity.
Okay,
But I don't know how at liberty I am to discuss specifics about that.
yeah. I mean, it's who could speculate about this stuff anyway, right? I mean,
Oh, dude.
specifics. Like, there's no way that you could predict, right, when it's going to open up, when the
Right.
waves are coming. But
Yeah.
how's your arm feeling today?
Oh, I was just going to mention that too. It's totally fine. It was a little
Yeah.
bit, tiny bit achy last night, but it's rare for me to have any sort of reaction to anything like that. How about you?
I never do. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, I did this time.
Yeah.
I had a little weird rash in the forearm. My arm, achy, but whatever. It's like much better than dying from COVID, right? And
Sure.
I'm excited to get, fully vaccinated. So
I
good.
know. Me too. Oh my God. Yeah.
God. Okay, so if that music director gig is all that you've been doing at this point, let's jump back a little bit. I'm ADD today. Let's go back to
Okay.
Boston. Like, tell me
Yeah,
about
man.
Boston and what brought you there.
Well, Berkeley brought me there.
Okay,
You
yeah,
know, I was just a music nerd. I grew up studying piano, and like around 10 or 11, I thought, oh, architecture would be amazing. Because I always liked to build things. I like to draw. And my uncle was an architect. Actually, he has been in Beaverton for 40 years
okay,
and 50 years maybe probably. And I always thought his house was really cool and he designed it. So he's like, oh, I want to do that.
yeah,
And um, so when I got to high school, I took drafting my freshman year and was one of a couple of freshmen to um, get accepted into the small group jazz choir
oh, sweet.
at Lewis and Clark High School in Spokane. And I loved drafting a lot, but I liked music more. And it was kind of at that point, I was like, no, I think this is what I want to do.
You felt the bug.
So I kind of just, I focused on it. We had a band in high school, we played the dances and all that kind of stuff. And finally found a piano teacher late in my junior year that I was like, okay, that's actually why I ended up going to Spokane Falls.
Okay,
Danny McCullum has a group in Spokane, had a group back then, Jazz Conspiracy. And they were a trio, except when Robert Vaughn was with him, he would sing sometimes. But generally they were a trio. Mark Ivester. Do you know Mark?
I don't.
He's in Seattle now, I think. And Clipper Anderson was the bass player. He's also in Seattle. Anyway, the
I,
three of
I should
them.
tell you the bands I knew in Spokane were all pretty much hair band rockers, right?
Yeah.
Wiser Sin was a band I loved so much, and they were in
Yeah.
Spokane.
Well, and like I said, I was already on the East Coast by the
Oh yeah.
time you were playing in Spokane, so I don't even know how active they were at that point. I
Okay.
think Flipper might have moved to Seattle like right around that time,
Okay.
so they might have disbanded. But they so most of my best friends were a year ahead of me in school, so a bunch of them graduated, and a few of them went to Falls. And that year, the Falls had a really good commercial music jazz studies program for a couple years on either side of me, and they were getting some pretty top-notch guests. My first year there, I volunteered to pick up Ernie Watts and Steve Smith from the
Oh,
airport, so
nice.
I got to meet those guys. But when I was still a senior in high school, Michael Brecker came through, and these guys played with him, and I was like, that piano player lives in Spokane. I need to study with that motherfucker.
Right. Yeah.
So I introduced myself and started taking lessons with him, and that's why I ended up going to Falls rather than I had a scholarship to go to U of I on a music scholarship, and I decided no, I don't want to go there because I'll end up with an ed degree, and I don't really want to teach. So I stuck around and played and gigged and got to Boston, and Danny went to Berkeley.
Okay.
So I mean, I already knew about Berkeley.
Yeah.
I got into Steely Dan hard when I was like 14.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. I was wondering where the early influences were. That's cool.
yeah, that's right. We started to talk about that too. So all over the map, man. You know,
The Steely Dan thing, it's so funny. I was such a late bloomer appreciator of, more, I would say cerebral jazz rock stuff,
mhm.
And so because I grew up in that sort of hair band sort of mentality, I didn't get it, as far as I was concerned. I loved like Chick Corea electric band and acoustic band. And I mean, those things, but
Yeah,
it was the jazz, the rock camp, and I didn't really sort of dig the blend, but now I look back and yeah, I know JD says my Steely Dan brother. I know I'm such a late bloomer, but I have to admit it, man. It's one of those things that I've just, I was a fleggling young punk kid. So,
yeah. Can I tell you one little aside that dovetails with a couple of things you've already talked about,
sure.
and that is I actually have two Chick Corea stories. One, I tuned for him. I used to tune pianos fairly regularly.
Okay.
I worked Cascade Piano for a while when I first got to Portland. He did a show in 2000, I think, at the Aladdin with his nonette, and I tuned for him. But that was the only time I ever saw him live. And in 1988, he had electric band, and Herbie was doing a Headhunters reunion, and they did a double bill
Wow.
at the King. Was it Kingdom or Tacoma Dome? Tacoma Dome. And I had tickets, and I got that gig with Rendezvous. And
Oh
the first
no.
weekend was up in Sandpoint, and it was the same weekend as the show. And Danny had recommended me for the gig, and I'm like, yeah, that would be great. I'll totally do it. But I've got tickets to see Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock that weekend. Can I start the week after? And they're like, nope.
Wow.
So
What
I
a
had to give up my
drag.
tickets. I know.
Oh man. But yeah, did you ever meet Herbie or Chick?
No.
No.
Well, I
So
met Chick. Yeah.
did you get a chance to? Oh yeah, because he tuned his piano.
Yeah.
Did you tell
Yeah.
him, hey, look, man, I was supposed to be doing this gig. I was gonna come see you.
No.
They hooked me up backstage.
No.
I
I said like nothing. Like it was literally the only concert tuning I ever did.
oh, okay.
And so I was nervous as fuck. Plus,
Yeah.
he's like totally an influence, and inspiration. And so I was like, "Hey, I'm your tech. How's the tuning?" He's like, "Oh, the tuning was great. The piano's a dog."
Oh
And the
man.
piano was a dog. The piano had a nickname around the store as the floater because it had been on a boat,
Oh,
and it had some water damage, but they continued to rent it out.
oh my God. Wow.
So the action was less than ideal.
That sucks. But, like, I know that he's kind of a stickler, right? I'd always heard that,
Oh yeah. Well, I always expected him to be an asshole, but he was fucking nice as hell.
even the one time I met him too, I ran backstage and snuck in to see him. All right, my dad took me to see him in '87 in Helena, Montana,
Wow.
and I was the acoustic band, Patitucci, Weckel.
Yeah,
I'd never seen anything like it,
dude.
and I didn't know better but to run backstage and say, "What the fuck? What was that?" And I was telling Dave, this blew my mind, and he was so gracious and cool. Patitucci was the only one that was kind of an asshole there,
Huh.
and but Dave invited me back to a hotel. We hung out, talked for a couple hours. My dad sat there just waiting, and then Weckl wrote me a letter later. I got this.
Dude, you're like just watching your show. It's like I'm such an introvert. I have no fucking clue. It's like you meet everybody.
Well, I mean, it's a curse and a blessing, right? Because, like, during a pandemic, it sucks because somebody who's, gregarious and outgoing and wanting to meet people, I'm just doing it this way. But,
Yeah.
and I think it's off putting because people that don't know me, when they first get to meet me, they think that I'm full of shit. They're like, what's this guy trying to sell, right? There's no way he can be that nice.
Oh, well, dude. Okay, so that's hilarious because let me tell you the story. So when our kids were at Springwater Environmental Sciences School in Oregon City, Oregon.
Yeah, we should tell people. Our kids grew up together. Look at this.
Yeah. Heather met Jen before you and I met.
Okay.
And they were at something, well, the parents were always there at that school because there was a lot of, just a lot of involvement and volunteerism and stuff. Yeah. And so Heather comes home one day and says, do you know Kevin Rankin? And I was like, no, I've never heard of him. It's like, he's a drummer in town. I was like, nope, I've never heard. Because, I was doing the jazz and blues scene, so very little crossover with the rock, especially at that time.
Right.
And so she tells me about how she and Jen had this conversation about how their husbands were musicians and that they had just kind of danced around, well, how much of a musician is your husband? Like until they finally both realized, oh, your husband's a pro too? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's the legitimacy.
Because they say, I'm a musician.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. My brother plays drums in a band. You're like, okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually cool when you can find out that they actually they're they've paid those dues, man. So
yeah. We have some shared history here.
Look at that, Emily Gibson. Here we go. She said he must know Lori as well. Emily Gibson blows my mind that I met her after our kids were at Springwater together, but we went to high school together. Right? Is that right, Emily? You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't. I think we were at a Springwater event, and she said, "Yeah, well, your friends with Amy, my friend Amy Knoll, and am I in the right, Emily? Sorry, and I apologize if that's not you." And JD says, "You guys are killing me." Yeah, Lori, which Lori, Emily? And while you're thinking about it, let me tell you guys something really quick.
I know a Lori, but I can't think of her last name right now. I can only see the red van again.
Oh yeah, Lori Cook. Yeah. So this is Emily Gibson. Yeah, we went to school together. Lori, no, not Lori Cook, but Lori
wasn't Cook.
No, but she went off. And she did the Vanagon and went off to she's in Hawaii now. So anyway,
she was a stewardess anyway. Yeah, anyway.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm going to tell some folks here this really quick because I see that JD's on Facebook. There are a handful of you guys that are not on YouTube right now. So I'm going to give you about 4 minutes to hit this link below because I want you all to come over to YouTube. I'm going to bring you into the fold. I want you to go to youtube.com/all-access.
I'm going to let my cat out.
Yeah, you do it. Go to youtube.com/all-access-live with Kevin Rankin. I'm going to give you a few minutes, and then I'm actually going to cut off the feed to every place else except Twitch and YouTube. So you got a few minutes, and while Brian brings the cat in, thank you, by the way, Emily, for the reminder. Okay, so enough about our common friends from school. Right. I want to know about your time in Boston because my buddies that have gone to Berkeley, and I think we talked about this too, right? You were there when Nate Morton was there.
That's right. That's kind of. Well, it's not how I ended up in Portland. I was going to come to Portland anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, my last week in Boston, I didn't know Nate well. I'd seen him play a bunch. And what did he do? Was he on The Voice?
He's on The Voice still, yeah. After
Jesus Christ.
I know, it's not good gig.
So I knew him well enough to say, hey, how's it going if I ran into him on the train, which is what happened. He's like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, well, I'm getting ready to move to Portland, Oregon. He's like, oh, no shit, you got to look up Joey Cyphers.
Wow. Okay.
And Joey had been there. He graduated the year before, but I'd never heard of him or crossed paths with him. And so when I did move to Portland at the end of '96, Joey was the first guy I called.
Okay.
And like within a week of talking to him and having a really nice conversation with him, I think he might have come over and we jammed a little bit. I went to the Candlelight on a Sunday night for the first time. and Chris Baum and Gary Fontaine and Frank, was that the drummer?
Well, when Gary was there, I don't know, but that's great that Fontaine was there at that time.
And Jay Bird was
Okay.
playing guitar,
David
and Ben
Coburn.
Fowler was there. It was the Sunday Jam, and so
Yeah.
I met Ben, and within like 2 weeks after that, Ben had put together Shag with me and Joey, and Dan Gilday,
Oh, wow.
and James Travers on drums.
Oh my God, that's right, man. God.
Yeah, so Nate kind of hooked me up with my first contact
I love it.
here in town. Yeah,
You know, our friends that do know Nate, it's ridiculous. I mean, he's the most. You talk about gregarious and outgoing.
dude.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Manyweather was playing drums. That's right. Yeah, thank you, JD.
No, it wasn't though. Not that night that I was there, JD. It was, damn it. It was. I think his name was Frank. He was a tall, skinny black motherfucker. He was like either Frank or Fred.
That should be on his business card.
Tall, skinny motherfucker, black motherfucker.
Tall, skinny black motherfucker. Yeah, yeah. No, God, there are so many great cats, as you and I both know. I was talking to Brian Foxworth earlier today because he's going to be on my day, and you know, there's a reverence for Brian Harris. Everybody that plays with you, you know, we talked before we went live too about how you haven't burned any bridges. You may have, what'd you say? You may have.
I said I might have a few charred ones, but I don't have.
Yeah, no, you know, because as anybody knows in a music sort of environment, it's all about the hang, right? And it's everybody that's really out there playing for the most part has chops enough to pull the gig off, but the attitude, the sort of the professionalism, the reliance, you know, on somebody to be able to like be there, not just physically, but you know, vibe wise when you go there is so key. And Foxworth had such great things to say about you earlier. I can't wait to have him on next week because he said, yeah, we shared some really amazing times. And the story he told me today floored me about rooming with you in Vegas and kind of transformation.
Dude,
yeah. So I'll let him tell that story, but
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was,
but
that was a pivotal moment in his life. And
yeah.
Whoa, dude. Yeah, that was a heavy weekend.
I'm glad things happened the way they did because probably wouldn't have him around anymore. And he's a big inspiration for me. Nate Morton too is right. I mean, that guy is an incredible player and just the nicest guy on the planet. He's tried to connect me with everybody, not like he's trying to help me walk up a ladder. He's just one of those guys that says, "Oh yeah, you're going to Portland, you know, get a hold of Joey." He does it because he genuinely cares about people, and I see that same thing with you. You know, so you play with a lot of bands in town that are buddies of mine, and I knew you did oh my God. Scott Kramer's here to tell you, make sure you're not telling tall tales out of school.
No,
this is
no,
good.
Not Kramer. Anybody in this joint.
That now that he's here, I'm just we've just got one viewer on Facebook, so you've got 30 seconds. I'm taking you off, and I'm putting everybody on YouTube in a minute. I will have this re-aired again on Facebook tonight at 7, but I want to have chat live on YouTube so I can look at one spot and one spot only. So here we go. So now, how do you know Scott?
Scott Kramer was the tour manager for Curtis Salgado when I joined the band in 2013.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, I was going to get to Curtis stories, man, because I know there are a bunch of them. And, you know, I have a funny Curtis story, too, which was nuts, that Jen and I went on the 80s cruise together to play with Huey Lewis. And Huey, he liked to party, right? So after his shows, he was frequenting the cookie bar a lot. and he came over and sat down by Jen, and Jen was heckling him. And he was a sport about it. Jen's not a, you know, fangirl or anything like that. So she was kind of ribbing him because by the second show, he was a little loopy and he was blaming it on the boat rocking, you know. But anyway, he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, I'm from Montana." And I said, "You got a place there too, right? Up by Kalispell." And he said, "Yeah. How'd you know that?" I said, "Well, my buddy had been a fishing guide for you for a bit." And he's like, "No way." I said, "But I'm in Portland now." And he goes, "Oh, so you know Paul DeLay and Curtis Salgado?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course. How?" And he's like, "Dude, Salgado is as good as it gets in this business on harp, man." And Huey is a great harmonica player.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Paul." He said, "Curtis is probably the greatest living harp player right now." And I'm like, "Dude, look at Curtis Salgado." That was cool. So anyway, All right. Yeah, I'm sure Kramer has a lot of stories that he can't tell. See,
Uh-huh.
I want to hear all the stories you can tell. Tell me a fun. Well, but we'll get to that. So from Boston, you came out here. You met up with Joey. You started gigging right away. Like, what was the? Because well, let me back up. Everybody I know that went to Boston, it is a tough town to break into, man. Unless you've got somebody that kind of can shoehorn you into a gig, you're having to hustle. You mentioned being kind of shy and introverted.
Yeah.
How did you end up going to get gigs out there, or was it difficult?
Well, I didn't.
Okay.
I mean, um, I finished up in '93, and that final year, um, one of my buddies, Dan Hawkins, we ended up rooming together after I graduated. He was a great bass player and a music production and engineering major,
Okay.
and we were roommates. And then my other roommate, um, Kenny Free, I lost track of him so long ago. I'm not sure that's his last name, but
Okay.
he was a film scoring major,
All
and
right.
so most of the playing, and I was a jazz comp major. I thought I was going to do, I wanted to do a double major in songwriting and commercial arranging.
Okay. Now this is
And
an important thing because you like when people think about going to music school, right, and I'm sorry to interrupt you again,
no, that's
but
great.
when parents hear about their kid going off to school to study music, so many parents are so fearful, right? Oh my God, my kid is destined for failure and they're going to be broke the rest of their life.
Yeah,
Or, they can get a normal music job as a teacher. You mentioned you didn't want to do that. And going in as a jazz comp major,
yeah, I did not go in like that.
oh, okay. I was just not. I guess as you were wanting to be both a composer for songwriting in a commercial environment. I mean, that's an opportunity, right, where you can make a little bit of money, right? You
Right,
can
and
write
that's kind
jingles.
of, I was like, well, I can do jingles, I can do whatever. I just know, even, I think I'm not sure at that point whether it was really fleshed out consciously yet,
Okay,
but I think part of the deal with having imbibed so much Steely Dan and Boz Scaggs at that point, it was really what I wanted to do was I just wanted to live in the studio
okay,
and play, and I didn't need to be on stage, I didn't need any of that kind of stuff. Um, but also performance major seemed like it was so hard. Like the amount of dedication to be able to do all those proficiency exams through all 4 years, it was like, 2 years of piano performance is all I can even handle because I'm just not that disciplined in that way.
okay,
So anyway, so I kind of knew that, and so I went in and I was like, I can write, and I like writing. Um, so I did that, and my first term in the songwriting class, since I knew I was coming on here, I've been racking my brain trying to remember which Stevie Wonder song I brought in, because one of the tasks was to bring in like a song that you love as
okay,
a great song. And I don't remember what song it was. It was definitely either off of Talking Book or Inner Visions.
okay.
But I brought it in, and my professor said like instantly, Stevie Wonder can't write songs, and I withdrew the next day. Like I'm like,
Wow,
fuck you, I'm out of
wow.
here. I'm
Stevie
out of
Wonder
here.
can't write songs.
Yeah.
That's
And this was the form class. So we weren't writing lyrics in this class. We were writing chords and melodies.
yeah.
And
Which is
it
all
was a
Stevie
very
Wonder was doing.
Nashville, yeah, it was a very Nashville centric thing.
Okay.
This is the form and you follow the form. And that's not the kind of songwriter Stevie is. And but when he just shat all over him, I was like, no, I'm not going to be in your class anymore. So then
Wow.
I dropped that idea. But I'd been taking harmony classes, and I'd been playing piano forever and studying theory. So I tested in pretty high. Um, I think there were 4 required harmony courses for all students, and I tested into the 4th one. And so from there on, I just kept taking advanced modal harmony and atonal harmony and 20th century harmony, like just all the harmony
Wow.
classes.
Okay.
And it came time to have to declare. I'm like, well, all I've got is harmony classes. What am I gonna like? What will all of these count towards? And jazz composition was it, so that's why I chose that.
Oh, okay.
That's why I chose
Were you doing vocal training at the same time?
that.
Why do
Well,
you?
after my first year, of piano performance, you have to have a principal instrument. I started to feel like that was too rigorous, so I thought voice would be easier.
Okay.
And so I switched my principal to voice
Okay.
and did one semester at that. And it was like, no, this is way harder. And I went back to piano.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, you do have a great voice though, and then
Oh, thanks.
I'm sure a lot of the harmony training and the other skills training certainly helped because I've heard you sing and play very seamlessly. It's nice. It seems like a natural thing for you.
Oh, yeah, very much is.
Mike Collins says he likes the David Letterman beard on you. The funny thing is, I had him take off the glasses earlier too, so he had that. He had the Letterman glasses going. It was perfect, man. Here we go. Look at this. All right, yeah. Oh my God, that's so good. Yeah. What I'm trying to think of what interchange Letterman and President Obama had on his show. That was. We'll save that one for part two. um, but
So to answer your initial
the vocal
question,
thing,
well, no, going back even further. So
the gigs.
I was ultimately a jazz comp major, so I was writing.
Okay.
I wasn't playing.
Okay.
And everyone who gigged, as far as I could tell, was a performance major.
Okay.
Because if you were in film scoring or MP&E or whatever, you didn't have time. So all of the playing I did my last 2 years there, really it was a year and a half because I did 2 summers, was for my buddies' projects.
Okay.
So we would do, go in and sound exactly like Billy Preston on Get Back, and film scoring sessions, for my buddies. And through that, I was writing songs at the time. And so Dan picked one of my songs for a production engineering project that he did.
Okay.
And out of that grew a band that became Jive Ass Slippers. And we did a few gigs. We did a gig at Venus de Milo, Lansdowne Street right there behind the Green Monster in the Fens. And we did a gig at the Rat. The Rat is where Aerosmith and
Right.
the Isles Band and all those Boston bands kept their teeth. It's a Starbucks now, which is pathetic, so pathetic. But yeah, so we did a few club gigs, but then our guitar player decided that it was getting too commercial and he didn't want to do it anymore. So.
Oh yeah, selling out, man.
So I didn't really do. I ended up my last 2 years there. One of my main jobs, I hooked up with this singer, went by the name of Bo Paris, and I still have no idea how old he was.
Okay.
So this was the mid-90s. I was back there in 2013. He was still doing it, except now he was just doing it just to tracks. And in 94, 95, when I was doing it, I was there kicking bass with a drum machine. And it was just the two of us. And he would do everything from Barry White to Sinatra to Billy Ocean.
Wow.
The gamut of lounge pop. And that was my gig there. And I also worked at Copycat, which was like the Kinko's
Sure.
at the time. And then moved to Portland in 96.
What brought you to Portland?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier, my uncle lived here.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I'd come here as a kid, I always really liked it. And then as I got to be a teenager, there was just kind of this buzz around, oh, Portland has a great jazz scene, and Portland has, and I don't even think I was 21 yet. I think I was still 20. And we were out here for a Thanksgiving, and me and one of my uncles and a cousin of mine went to, pretty sure it was called The Hobbit.
Okay.
And Mel Brown was playing there.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is 1989 or 88, one of those years. And so I saw Mel Brown play at The Hobbit back then. And it was just crushing. I can't remember who was playing piano for him. It was amazing. And it was and I'd kind of heard things, and then I saw that and I was like, oh, it's all true. So I just had this thing.
Yeah.
I liked the vibe, but it was bigger than Spokane. I miss the East Coast practically every day. I love Boston. I love New York. I love the vibe of it. But I wanted to be in the Northwest. I wanted to be closer to my family, but not Spokane close, you know. So
What do you miss most about, like, say, I get the difference. I mean, Boston and New York, they are different cities for sure.
for sure,
I know, because New York is so fast paced, right? I mean, if you're wanting a gig to get inside on the real happening gigs, um, you know you've got to at least be able to maneuver. I don't know what I say, maneuver. Your relationship building has got to be key and strong, and not just your playing, right? Because there are a
yeah.
million cats out there that can play. What is it you miss the most about the New York vibe?
Well, I never lived in New York.
But just you
You know, I
felt it.
just went through. It's so hard. Part of it is just the aesthetic.
Okay.
Like I just love like Chicago. I never had been to Chicago until like 5 years ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and there's a similar thing in Chicago that I love it. I
Yeah.
fucking love it. It's
The
just fantastic. There's an electricity. Um, I don't
I
know. I don't
I
know how to say any more specifically than that.
Well, I'll tell you because you and I talked last night, like off, in line about the Zappa documentary,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and I didn't finish it yet. I just, yeah, I was loving it though, and I got about halfway through it. We'll touch on because you said there were some nits that you had about it, but I didn't realize that that was really the formative change for him because
Right?
I always equated L.A.,
Yeah,
being his
I
thing, and then
know.
but he talked about how they became the residency at that club, and
Fillmore East.
right, and even before Fillmore East, they were doing that little tiny club. Remember they did like it was like a 200 seater and maybe
Mm-hmm.
200 seater, and they did 60 nights in a row or something like that. And he said
Yeah,
that was the place where we were able to do everything that was experimental and get our get our rocks off
hmm
and develop the professionalism of the band and be accepted there because they didn't have any, long-haired hippie LA vibe in New York, but they were accepting because they recognized the legitimacy of what Frank was
yeah.
doing. So I'm wondering if there's some of that too, where you could see, the acceptance or the tolerance of expressionism, in New York. I
Oh,
mean,
I think that's yeah. I think it's very not monochromatic. You know, like in every way, in ethnicity, in uh,
culture,
every manner of culture.
yeah,
Everything, anything that you want, you can find,
right,
and it's probably within walking distance.
sure,
So that's really, I think that's the primary thing.
okay,
Um, but also it's kind of neck and neck with just the culture, the level of um, artistic energy that just courses through those cities is
right
great.
on, yeah, I dig it. Can you
You know, and
feel? Can you?
Portland has it too, but it's in San Francisco and LA, but they're all very different. It's such a West. I don't know how to differentiate between the East Coast vibe and the West Coast vibe. But one of my best friends in high school learned that I was moving to Boston. He's like, "That's good, man. You're not paced for the West Coast."
Interesting.
So I
But
was like,
I think you are though. That's the thing.
"Yeah, yeah,
I mean, you could probably obviously acclimate to either spot, but I've always seen you very laid back, very easygoing. You're smiling. You lead with your heart, where a lot of East Coasters kind of hide some of that. They're leading with the chin before they lead with the heart. And
yeah." I've got a little of both, dude.
yeah,
I'm this. I came back for Christmas. Um, I'd only been in Boston for 4.5 months at that point. Came back for Christmas. My mom asked me to drive to the store to grab something, and so I drive to this store that's like 8 blocks away from my house that I grew up in Spokane. And I get to the checkout line, and I get to the counter, and the clerk says, "So how are you doing today?" And the first thing that went through my head was, "Why the fuck are you talking to me?"
oh god,
Like that fast.
yeah, that's
That's
East
all the
Coast.
time it took me to get completely acclimated.
Oh my God, man, that um, good influence on the kids, man. I as your kids are getting older, I mean, they're older now. Are you do you feel like they would have an interest back east?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, Ella used to talk about moving to New York the second she graduated high school.
Wow.
That's all she wanted to do.
And Duncan?
And Duncan is, he's at Southern Oregon now studying theater.
Sweet.
So he was talking about possibly finding a school in New York to go to instead. So yeah.
Yeah, man. So we might get to see little Brian Harris over on the East Coast at some point. Before we have you go anymore, I'm dying to hear a little bit of that piano right underneath you, if you're cool with it, man.
Yeah, man.
I cut off Hail Caesar because we were subject to the bots on YouTube. They might do it again while you play too. Hopefully.
No, I seriously doubt it. It'll be very different.
Okay.
But honestly, dude, that was shocking how fast that happened.
Yeah. Well, the more this happens, man, the more people are making money off YouTube, at least, you wrote the song, right? So,
yeah. Is JD still out there?
He is. Yeah. He said Gordon Lee was probably the one that was playing piano on that gig. Oh, look at that. Oh man.
That's my handmade coaster, dude.
Look at that. That's great. That's yeah, I think he's still here. We'll see if he chimes in. Yeah. I'm excited about this because with the departure of Jimmy Max, it's been a long time since we've gotten to hear you do this stuff. I think Ants in the Kitchen was the last gig that I got to see you play in town, which my dear friends from Five Star Guitars, Joff Mitz, and Dane Ryan.
Those guys are great. I would have loved to continue. I was just starting to spread myself too thin.
It happens, man. I mean, it's great.
Yeah,
you're in demand, which is awesome, and they're all great players. The cool thing about that gig was that it blended so many styles, right? You had the rock, R&B, and horns, and I guess it's been hard to hear me because I've been too quiet. See, I'm getting to be a soft talker again. I'll turn this up, but you know what? You don't have to listen to me at all because Brian's going to rock a little bit. He's going to play some music here.
So I'll just do that little solo bit.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Thanks, man. I'm gonna hide.
This has it.
That is so tasty. Oh my God. I miss that. Wow.
Yeah, so that's Curtis's new record is totally forgetting the title of it right now.
Oh.
But that was Jimmy Pugh played on that record. And Jimmy's just one of the best blues piano players around.
Damage Control.
So that was just kind of my riff on what he did.
Damage Control was the record. It's the record.
Damage Control. That's right.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to having Curtis on to rap a little bit too.
Absolutely.
I remember Brian Foxworth sharing a little bit of that too, like when the recording of the album and just the look at what was to come. And man, it's been said, right, that everything's been done in the blues, but it's done and interpreted in so many different ways that this sounded new and fresh and really, really hip, So
yeah, and it's really, it was great to get the call because I haven't played with him in a while, and it also at this point in the pandemic it was brutal, brutal because it's a rock and roll record. It's a lot of Little Richard. My chops are shot.
Oh,
shot. So I got to get back in shape because things are starting to gear up again.
Yeah, but do you know Brady Goss?
I know the name.
Yeah, I did some recording recently with Mike Skill, actually from Romantics. We're doing some recording again tonight. Nice. But Brady was in on this gig, and he was doing a lot of that, the real like quick Little Richard type stuff. And I realized how much I just love that feel. You know, I mean, you can't help but smile. And that's another thing about your playing. You play so spirited, right? That some guys that play like piano or keyboards, they have to try to look cool, you know, so they're not smiling, but you can tell that there's pure joy. Is that the place that you go to just lose to get loose?
Sometimes it is. Um, some people might, instead of spirited, say rush.
Do you find that you tend to be on top of it?
Dude, I'm so on top of it.
Yeah.
But here's the crazy thing. I actually had a real revelation about this about 3 weeks ago. Um, no, it was the week of the ice storm because for New Thought Center for Spiritual Living, the band is myself and Adrian Martin on guitar, and Brandon Hitu has been our bass player when we were in person. John Bluster has been doing it since we've gone virtual, and Joe Menges is our drummer.
Awesome. Love Joe.
So the week of the ice storm, Joe and Adrian, neither of them had internet.
Oh no, that's right.
And so I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll program the drums. And what we've been doing is playing to original tracks. So whatever the recording is, we just play to that. And that way everybody's playing to the same thing. We don't have to wait for tracks to be uploaded and mixed. And so I can't remember the tune, but I played the drums through with it. And because I was doing it to a live thing, I didn't quantize it. So I'm listening to my keyboard tracks, and then I go and I'm like, oh, that feels like it's a little bit ahead. But when I did the drum track, it was behind.
Oh man.
So I literally hear it that way somehow.
Interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
You know what? It doesn't surprise me. I mean, somebody that doesn't sort of understand the way there's that push pull, in the musicianship. I mean, when I'm playing, because I play with so many different bass players for different gigs, and like all the Flock of Seagulls stuff, right? It's very on top of the beat, and
Yeah.
even though it's all synthesizer drums on the records, yeah, it's way pushed, and it's very on top and very mechanical and very quantized. And then when we play with a live bass player, it doesn't feel exactly the same. I play a little behind the beat with my kick drum, but I play a little on top of the beat with my snare.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing for some guys too, because they're like, wait a minute, what's disjointed about it? It's the way that I just learned to play. It's just my own natural tendency. And
Yeah.
understanding it is great going into the studio, because I can explain to an engineer.
Yep.
I can tell you what's intentional and what's just me being shitty. Okay.
Right.
So,
Yes.
but
Exactly right. Yeah.
it's for me, when I was younger, I always wanted to be a session guy. And then I realized I live to play live. I do, man. That is, it's why the pandemic killed me, because I could care less about going to play, yeah, I get all this time. I can go play now, right? I don't want to play by myself, right? That's the worst kind of masturbation to me there is.
That's so funny because, I was saying earlier that when I was like 19, all I wanted to do was be a studio musician.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to do. And since February, I've done more sessions in the last 3 months than I've done in the last 3 years.
Wow.
I did a rooftop screamers right before the pandemic.
That's right. Mike Collins, man.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
And dude, such great stuff.
It is.
So happy to be asked to do that. What a great project. But I did a session a few weeks ago for Dirk Sullivan, who was on your show.
Oh my God. I
did
love him
a couple
too.
of tunes with him and Greg Williams, and that was a blast. And Soul Vax is in the studio doing original stuff. We're doing one of my tunes. I think we've got about 4 that are almost in the can.
Right on.
And what was the other one that I did? Oh, the Curtis thing. Yeah. So like I've just had sessions lately. It's great.
Yeah. Well, especially.
But also, this whole past year has just been a identity crisis that I just can't even describe. Like I didn't quite. I mean, there have been times in my life when I've literally felt like, oh, music just saved my life. Like if I didn't have music, I don't know what would happen going forward. And it's especially weird being an introvert, because in some ways the pandemic has been like the greatest year of my life.
Right. Because it's
Um,
acceptable to be
yeah,
withdrawn.
it's like I don't have to see anybody. I don't have to talk to anybody. It's like it's kind of fantastic.
Hmm.
And there's something about being out in the world playing with two or three or nine other people that has become something that I never have taken it for granted, but I also didn't realize how deeply it ran in terms of my identity, who I think of myself as.
I'm glad you brought up the terminology. I mean, I've brought it up on the show a bunch too. That it would be nice if the world recognized Brian Harris for Brian Harris, but also Brian Harris, the keyboardist, Brian Harris, the pianist, Brian Harris, the songwriter. It'd be great if there could be equal parts recognition and identity. But if you self-identify, right, as a musician, and then the ability to bring that craft to be appreciated and respected gets halted, right?
Yeah,
It's not like you got an injury, right? Like people go through that situation where you break a wrist and
right.
all of a sudden you can't play for a while, and it's a heartbreak, but it's coming back. You know
Yeah,
that okay, I can rehab and I'm going to get this thing back, and maybe I lost a gig out of it or whatever, but
yeah. There are
but
things that I can control where I can get back on the horse and it'll be fine.
right, but having no control over all of this, that is where the identity crisis hit every musician on the planet.
Mhm.
I mean, and it touched everybody on the planet, but as musicians, as artists, I mean, imagine, right? I mean, you talk about, Duncan and Ella going to New York, and if they're in theater and they're all set up, their Broadway debut, right? They're just getting ready to roll on Broadway, and then the theaters are all shut
Oh
down
man,
and
yeah,
they're stuck. And if they had all their eggs in that basket where their only income was going to be revenue from box office, what do? They're
yeah,
working in bagel shops, right? And
dude. And theater, as bad as music got hit,
theater harder, right? Because
theater got hit so much harder because there's just no, you know, like we said, Duncan's down at Southern Oregon, and they've been doing productions via Zoom,
yeah.
and uh, they're three cycles in now, and this last one was like just the virtual sets, like just everything was just so cool and amazing. But it's still they're literally in their apartments.
Yeah. And it's great that they can make do with that,
Yeah,
but
for
but
sure.
is that really preparing them
Yeah,
for
well, and that's a college
stagecraft?
situation. They're not making revenue from that, so they're yeah. Oh my god, I can't even imagine
Yeah.
being a professional actor right now,
It,
stage actor.
I love having this vehicle though for people to talk about it because I've had plenty of actors on the show and people in different environments where they've talked about coping mechanism. How have you coped, man, with the identity crisis? What has this been like for you? That I mean, I'm grateful. I'm glad to hear that you've had these recording sessions, but when
Yeah.
you hit times of wow, my identity's taken a huge hit here. How's Brian Harris surviving this thing?
Well, I feel like I did a pretty solid, healthy job of surviving it for the first 8 or 9 months,
Okay,
and not so good lately.
yeah,
Been drinking more than I probably should. Been playing a lot of Splinter Cell.
mm,
Um, watching a lot of Craig Ferguson on YouTube.
mm.
But
How?
also playing more like especially last couple of weeks. I've been playing more just because I realized, oh my god, work is eventually going to come back, so I need to get myself back in shape. So
There's a lot of
that's
that
good.
tunnel. That you find like the escapism is kind of what you were going into, where
Oh yeah,
yeah, I mean, because you can control Splinter Cell, right? You can control
yeah,
turning it on, not the TV, and get
yeah,
lost in it for a little bit.
yeah,
I I mean, people deal in different ways too, and I'm always fascinated by friends of mine. I mean, I respect the hell out of you, and I've always have, and your playing and your attitude and your personality, and it's helpful to me when I hear people that I look up to, that say, yeah, it was a struggle because that's reality,
yeah,
right? I mean, Foxworth and I were talking about it earlier. He said, people that are outside at the clubs or venues or whatever watching you and they think, musicians, especially if you got, a recognizable national gig, they think, oh, this dude's bulletproof, right? And he never has bad days. And the guy's rolling in cash and, and all of those things could
That's a
not
good
be
one.
farthest from the truth, but, and so, the vulnerability, the authenticity of being able to say, hey, man, I'm just like the same as the guy, the grocery worker down the street that lost his gig because the grocery stores had to downsize or whatever.
Hmm.
The fact that everybody's they talk about it being the great equalizer, right? That everybody got touched by it, but there were some people that just haven't been able to hang
Right.
and pivot and do something else with it. And it nearly took me out, man, in November. I should not be here, but I'm grateful that I
Mm.
am. And what it did, it taught me a lot about some deficiencies I had and coping mechanisms,
Yeah.
and I'm glad for it because, 50 years old now. It's time to grow up and learn a little bit about how to be a responsible communicator and
Yeah.
a human being. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to go down that deep well. I want to talk a little bit about the Curtis experiences because I bet you
Okay,
have some
cool.
funny stories, man. And you also went out with Lisa Mann, I think, right to
Yeah.
Memphis.
We did the International Blues Challenge in 2011. I think I'd been with her for 2 years, about 2 years at that point.
Okay,
Um, that was a blast, man. I mean, Memphis is another city. I could totally live in Memphis. I just love it.
I've never been. Can you believe
It's
it?
really hit. It's really hit. Um, yeah, that was fantastic because Lisa is, I was when I got to Portland, I did Shag with Ben Fowler for a couple of years, and then you're getting ready to have our first kid, and we wanted Heather to stay at home, and and the band had kind of split up at that point too. So I went and started teaching more, and got a piano tech job and was tuning pianos and stuff. So I was kind of out of the scene for about 3.5, 4 years.
Okay,
Um, and when I got back in, it just happened to be Heather was working with someone who knew Margot Tufo, and so I ended up playing Candlelight every Tuesday with Margot for a year and a half or so. And so it was totally by accident that I got swept into the blues scene.
okay,
It was never a thing that I intended.
really?
Um, and so I went through Margot, and then I played with Greg Earl for a while, and then SUMO came along, and we started doing SUMO. Um, and I was always sort of, wanting to put together my own band, and had a couple albums worth of material. It was whatever. I still have it. It just hasn't had anything done with it, largely. Um, and so I was putting it together a recording project for my stuff, and I asked Lisa to come do it. And actually, I asked her to join the band, and she's like, "Well, I can't," because she was just starting to do her solo thing at the time. And so, a couple of years after that, I heard that Alex was leaving to do the Insomniacs. And so I don't know if I called her, if I saw her someplace. I was like, I hear you are lost a keyboard player. And I wanted to work with her because her songwriting, I mean, her voice, Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
her voice, like there's nothing you can't say Jesus Christ about with her. But her bass playing, her voice, her songwriting. And I think it really was, I mean, I've played with a lot of great musicians. I think it was really the songwriting. It was like, I
Okay.
want to support those songs because they're so well crafted, and they're funny, and they're political when they need to be. And I love everything about Lisa. I just
Right
can't say
on.
enough about her. And so I kind of weaseled my way into that gig. And uh, yeah, so we auditioned for the International Blues Challenge, and ended up representing the Cascade Blues Association down there. And we lost in the semifinals to the band that ultimately won the whole thing.
Okay.
I don't know who it was. He was on national TV. He plays violin, fiddle. But yeah, that my time with Lisa was fantastic. And the only reason I left the band is because Curtis called, and I was like, I'd kind of like to see a little bit more of the world. So
Yeah. And you
now
guys,
Lisa has done that, but not, and that's the other thing too. Even Curtis has had to cut back on
yeah.
taking the band around. He'll play with a European band or a Brazilian band, and it's just not financially feasible to take all the cats around the world anymore.
Yeah. I mean, how big was that band? The Curtis band that you were touring with?
It was a 5 piece.
Okay. That yeah, it's interesting, how tough international travel gets to be. I'm amazed when we can do a Flock of Seagulls gigs, in Mexico or Europe, and because it's expensive to get even work visas, right? I mean, if you're getting paid over there, it costs somebody money, and if it's
Yeah.
not costing the band, promoters and bookers don't necessarily want to pay that much more, and
Right.
so
I
they'll
know.
encourage an artist to pick up somebody local. And I get it; it makes sense, but when you were picking up the Curtis gig, how often were you guys gigging? Were you like doing extended tours, or were they just kind of a few dates here and there, flyouts?
I think the first couple of years we would do like an early summer tour that was three or 3 to 5 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks,
Okay.
and then like a late summer tour. We generally always be back in Portland for Blues Fest.
Okay.
Um, Not always. Actually, one year, it was my second year with the band. I had actually arranged to sub out the last week of the tour because um, I was having her 16th birthday and I wanted to be here for that. And that was the year that Greg Allman ended up in the hospital and had to cancel his headlining spot.
Wow.
And so Kramer,
Mm.
Scott, oh, poor Scott. Um, so the band flew out Sunday morning, the last day of Blues Fest from Iowa, and headlined that night.
Wow.
And Kramer was stuck with the van and the trailer driving it back from Iowa and
Oh.
blew out an engine not far outside of Iowa, if I
Oh
recall.
no. Oh
But yeah, that's a story for him to tell.
God, the worst.
That's we need to have some tour managers on this show.
Oh, I've had some for
Have you?
sure.
Have you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Terry Finley came on. He was
Oh,
with
nice.
Chicago forever, and Pat Benatar and Brian Setzer. He's a guy's been around, and we have a lot of those kind of stories. A lot that he couldn't tell too, because
Oh, sure.
you can't burn bridges. They might
Yeah.
come back around, but
Right.
yeah, the tour manager stories are great because they're glorified babysitters.
Oh, dude.
They and they
Yeah.
but
Like
yeah,
Marvel Universe babysitters.
it's true. I know. Yeah, I'm thinking about like the Curtis tours. So did you guys on that first tour? Did you guys get outside the country?
Well, I joined right after they had done a big European tour in the
Okay.
spring of 13, and I joined in August of that year.
All right.
Um, and then I think it was that first year we did a one off in Poland.
Wow.
We went and we played a Friday night in, or no, I guess we played Saturday night. We got in on Friday. Nick Moss headlined Friday. We headlined Saturday night. Um, would have flown out, but Vyas Dodson was the guitar player at that time, and Drew Scholes was playing drums with us on that
Wow.
run. And so the three of us ended up going to Prague for a couple of days just because we were there, and it was only 4 hours away. So,
Right
yeah.
on. I've not been. What was the
So
Poland gig like? Was that a festival?
it was in Ostrov Wielkopolski,
Okay.
and yeah, it was just a blues festival there,
Okay.
and it was all uh, Central European blues bands except for Nick Boss band and Curtis Salgado.
All right. So what's the difference in sort of the presentation, the setup, the treatment of bands at a
Well,
Polish blues festival versus something at Waterfront?
see, that's one of those things that had it been like an outdoor festival like the Blues Fest, it would have been different because there would have been trailers and stuff. But this was in a theater that was fairly small, and so we heard the last 20 minutes of the band before us, and that was it.
Really?
And it was, it was good. It wasn't great.
Sure.
Um,
But energy and the vibe's different though, for sure.
well, the vibe's different. The energy's fantastic
Yeah.
because they love it so hard, and they are so into it
Okay.
and so committed to it, and have no local mentors to say, yeah, maybe not so much. You know?
Yeah. I'm responding to Evergreen here in the chat. He's asking which band you were from. We're talking about you touring with Curtis Salgado,
Yeah.
internationally touring. Um, and I mentioned this earlier, and he wasn't around, I don't think, in this chat, but I loved, meeting Huey Lewis and having him just freak out when he found out that I live in Portland, where Curtis Salgado was. And
Yeah.
but I think Evergreen here is a little younger. I've seen you on the chat here. Um, the really cool thing is that Curtis Salgado was the original Blues Brother, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they based that whole Belushi um, movie on Curtis Salgado and the original Blues
Yep.
Brothers, right? So,
Yeah.
um, but those tours, I mean, I could imagine, and that was a different lineup too that you had when you did that show in Poland. But I've known a bunch of the different cats that you've had. I know Reinhardt's been on gigs as of late, and um, Jaybird actually went and played with him as well,
Yeah.
right? So, and I love him. Amazing guy. I'm thinking about knowing these guys and seeing you guys out on tour. Like, was it pretty wild and nuts, or were things pretty toned down? I mean, Curtis is,
No, by the time I got there, things were pretty toned down.
okay.
Um,
They've been there, done that.
yeah, I think I've heard stories of times right before I had joined that were less than toned down.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, there was nothing crazy at all.
So, do you get a chance to travel? I mean, you mentioned going to Prague. Were there enough times then when you guys are out? If people are not interested in going nuts and getting lit up, do you guys like to go and hit museums or local establishments and check out the
Well,
culture?
um, a lot of the guys just stick around in the hotel. I'm usually try to walk around a little bit. I used to do a lot of walking, um, but my thing is baseball.
Yeah.
So no matter where we went, like if there was a tour booked between April and October, I was instantly looking at schedules, like who's going to be where. It was all about finding a game.
Yeah. So
So
you caught a lot of away games.
yeah, caught Nationals game and Orioles and Kansas City Royals, Minnesota Twins, St. Louis Cardinals, Memphis Storm, AAA.
Wow.
My biggest disappointment was the first Northeast tour I did with them was in August, just prime baseball season. And when we were in New York, the Mets and Yankees were both out of town.
Oh,
When we were in Boston, the Red Sox were out of town. When we were in Syracuse, um, the was it Rochester or Buffalo? The Rochester team was playing Syracuse, and when we were in Rochester, they were playing
oh
Syracuse.
no.
Like it
Oh,
literally. That
was anybody else in the
was always.
band?
Pardon?
Was anybody else in the band into baseball, or you just on your own?
Occasionally, Kramer and Mike Kreider came with me to see the Memphis game, and also Curtis came to see the Nationals play the Astros in Washington.
Right on.
And Austin Early, who was on drums on that later tour to me with Baltimore, and and Kramer did the Royals with me. We went
Okay.
to Kansas City. That was a total fluke too, because that was a day off and we had van trouble,
Oh no.
and we ended up staying at the Sheraton across the street from Kauffman Stadium to get the van fixed, and they happened to be in town that night. So
Oh, nice. Well,
yeah, that was awesome.
yeah, that's an easy. That doesn't happen very often. I know. And
No, it
I
does not.
I usually try to
And that's
do.
the other thing about, you asked, like, do you do cultural things and stuff? It's like, well, a lot of the times we're not in a cultural center, and B, usually when we are, we're at like an airport hotel,
Right. Yeah.
because it's too expensive to book in the city center.
Yep.
So we're out in strip mall
Right.
outskirts.
Yeah. I love that. The poll that our singer has when Mike is out there doing it, he'll oftentimes ask for the nice hotels downtown. When we get them, if we're playing, we did Tribeca a few years ago, and so we're right in the heart of Manhattan,
Yeah.
and had incredible hotel. And those don't happen very often. When we get stuck in Four Seasons, it's not because that's on band budget, right? That's when he can just wheel and deal a little bit of extra nut from the promoters. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah. When we did BB King's in Times Square, we were staying in Connecticut.
Oh yeah. That, I for me, it's funny. I talk to some people about touring One of the things I remember a lot about the bigger tour, I guess it's one thing to, I guess, so many places start to look the same, right? If it's a shed, it looks the same, or if it's a theater, a lot of them look the same, unless there's some real distinguishing characteristic. For me,
Yeah.
sometimes the back line, but always the catering. I always remember catering if it stands out and if it's good or
Yeah.
really bad, But
Sound checks.
do you have a favorite catering spot?
Um, there's one that I can't. I'm not pulling it up.
It's okay. I'm going to put you
Yeah,
on. I'm putting you on the spot all over the place because
that's all right.
next question I'm going to ask you. I have a few consistent questions that I ask everybody. One of the things I love to find out, a lot of people know, they think they know Brian Harris because they've seen you playing a bunch of gigs. A lot of people don't get a chance to really know who you are, right? Because they're at a club and they might get to say hi for a little bit. But people that think they know Brian Harris, what would they be really surprised to know? I like to ask about people's guilty pleasures. What's something that people would be just amazed to know?
Well, I'm not particularly guilty about any of my pleasures. Like musically, like the Carpenters and Barry Manilow. Like Carpenters doesn't seem to be sketchy. Like there's no shame around the Carpenters anymore.
Right.
Used to be.
Yeah.
But Barry Manilow for me.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
that's a good one, man.
and now I think that's because of the arranging. He's a crushing arranger.
And
His band was just always ridiculous.
and wrote a
Um,
lot for other people too, right? I remember,
yeah,
yeah, that. Yeah, are you a sucker for a love song?
not particularly.
Okay.
Um, I don't understand why Wings' "Silly Love Songs" gets all the hate because I kind of think that song's great.
I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, not particularly. I mean, "Joni's a Case of You" is maybe in my top 5 songs of all time, but
Okay.
not because it's a love song, just because it is what it is.
Yeah.
Um,
Big Joni Mitchell fan.
Huge Joni Mitchell fan.
Yeah, she's another one, right? That
Yeah,
she had the New York thing. I
yeah,
remember like seeing her on the Jocko
yeah. Well,
documentary.
if I could only have, Desert Island Discs top 10, whatever.
Yeah,
I was just about to say if I could only have one record to listen to for the rest of time,
yeah.
it might be Hijira.
Wow. Okay. Well, let me think about that then. So we're Desert Island Records. Sometimes I like to ask people their dream band, their lineup. So Brian Harris is
Ooh.
music director, and Brian Harris, living or dead, I want Brian Harris to put together
Oh,
his band of all time.
whoa, I've never even considered that before. Um, I think Bernard Purdy on drums.
Oh yeah, that's two in a row for Bernard.
um, it's just going to be one of Steely Dan's bands. I can tell already.
Yeah.
I was going to say
Okay, well, let me
either.
ask you this: Who plays Brian Harris in the Brian Harris band? If Brian Harris is music director and isn't going to be playing, but you're a music director, who do you want playing you?
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'll say Joe Sample on keys
Cool.
and Michael McDonald on vocals.
Oh, nice. That's great, man. I like that. That's a good one. Uh, okay, the last sort of obligatory question, and this is a good one because I feel like you and I, we got to know each other obviously outside the clubs. I mean, our kids grew up together going to charter school. It's environmental sciences charter school.
Yeah,
A lot different than this public school environment where, we might see each other at assemblies and that's it, right? We were involved in our kids' sort of understanding of protecting our environment. And I love that. And I thought we had a lot of commonalities. Um, while you might say you're introverted and shy, and I found that I discovered that side of me during the pandemic. And it was a strange identity shift. I won't say that's an identity crisis, but it made me think a lot about whether or not my actions were congruent with my values. And I wanted to do that sort of analysis because I wanted to know, if I was really living an authentic life. I
Hmm.
wanted, if I'm setting an example for my kids and leaving a legacy, what do I want the legacy to be? And it's been amazing to me to explore other people's journey that way. So, Brian Harris, this is the Barbara Walters question. On your last days, as you're reflecting back on your life and you're thinking about those you impacted and your accomplishments, what do you want to be remembered for as a legacy?
Well, that whole notion of legacy has never really resonated with me. Like, I don't. I guess I would hope that I was well liked
Okay.
by more people that came in contact with me than not. Um, and I would hope that my kids were happy and healthy,
Yeah.
and as uh, as well adjusted as possible.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that wanting to be a good steward, is certainly something that I could see there. I mentioned my reflection on my actions, making sure that my actions are reflective and congruent with my values. Sometimes they misalign, and
Hmm.
it's good for me to recognize those things and say, all right,
Yeah,
gotta reshift.
for sure.
How's that been for you? You feel like you've got a handle on that right now, or
Honestly, right now, like in the last
hour?
three
No,
months,
no.
it's been a little shaky.
Okay.
Um, but I have seasons in my life,
Yeah.
um, and I had a long stretch from about 2003 to 2013 where they were very much not,
Okay.
and I paid the price for that and came out of it much better and healthy, and in a way that now that the last 3 months have been hard, I know what solid and uh, integral feels like.
Yeah.
So it's not a mystery to me. It's not like, yeah, it's not a mystery to me. It's still close at hand.
Yeah.
So and talking about it in this sort of a situation is very helpful too, because it just holds the mirror up and reaffirms
Yeah.
what I already know to be true.
When you speak those things, it's different than, the stuff that kind of goes on in your mind. For me,
Yeah.
I could get stuck in my brain for a long time,
Mm,
but if I talk to somebody about it,
yeah.
it holds me accountable for one. And number two, I can realize that maybe when I vocalize it, it's been a little incongruent, right? And so I can just realign whether I speak
Yeah.
it, to you or to somebody else or write it down. I mean, I write stuff down more now than I ever have because I
Mhm.
can go back and look at it 6 months from now.
Yeah.
Even our conversation early on where we said, "Hey, how's your arm?" We had this joke about the vaccination. 20 years from now, my hope is that COVID, I mean, I have a feeling, it's going to be around forever in some sort, right? But I would love in a utopian world, we would laugh and go, "What the hell is he talking about this vaccination thing?" In this
Right.
pandemic. Why are these guys talking about what a shitty year during the pandemic? You know, it would be nice to kind of have that be a distant memory. But it's a mark in time, right? And how we've
Yeah.
sort of we've got the chapters in the book. This last chapter was interesting. We've probably all learned a lot. I know I have, and it sounds like you have too. And I'm excited that we're going to see more of Brian Harris. I'm going to get to see more of you, even if you move to the East Coast. You move to New York. My contemplation is to sell the house and get a vehicle that I can just travel for a while. It's been
Yeah.
on.
See, part of me is like can do that, but the other part of me is like I need this and my roads, and they're not fitting in a trailer and
Yeah,
doing very well. And I also need my wood shop. Maybe that would be the thing that people would surprise people.
your wood shop. Yeah, so you're a woodworker.
Yeah.
Okay, what? Is that a place that you can kind of go and just sort of meditate and work in wood with your hands and have some,
Traditionally, it has been. Yeah, we had we'd been in that house that you knew
yeah.
for 11 years, and the landlord's sold in 2017.
Oh, wow.
So we've been in a much smaller place since then, and so my entire shop, except for my bench, has been in storage.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, that's been
Another identity crisis.
totally.
Wow. You
Yeah.
know, just keep throwing speedballs at you and see if you can, how many you can dodge. And, but I, I'm grateful to know that, you're coming out the other side, man. You've got a lot more wisdom in that beard right now than, hopefully we all have,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad to hear that Duncan and Ellen and Ella are thriving, and please say hello to Heather for me. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate getting to hear you play your piano, man.
oh, thanks,
That
man.
was so great. How do people find out more about you? Is there a website out there that's best representational for you?
Oh man, no, there's one that's not representation at all. I didn't even mention my band,
Yeah.
the Damn Straight.
Yes, man. That's right. That well, I pimped it in the setup, but
Good,
talk.
good, good.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
what's
because we
what's up?
haven't played in a year. But it's thedamnstraightband.com.
Okay.
And there's nothing up there yet except for some pictures. Um, and I don't know. We'll have to see. We did Wednesdays at Clyde's for about 3+ years, and then we switched to Trails
Okay.
6 weeks before the pandemic, and so that's where we're going with that.
There. Yeah. Well, Trails is doing gigs again.
I
So
know. Yeah,
hopefully we can see the
it's going to
damn.
get back. As soon as everybody gets vaccinated, it's still. I can't even imagine owning a restaurant or a club right now.
Yeah.
It's like even at even at full capacity,
Yeah.
it's rough.
Well, because they've had a year of nothing, right?
Well,
And
but I mean, even in the best of times,
yeah, right.
full capacity is still tough to keep a restaurant going. So if you're restricted to 25 or 50% capacity, that's scary, I would imagine.
And the ebb and flow where they would say, all right, Friday, we're going to open at 50% capacity. And then Thursday night, they say, you know what? We changed our mind.
Yep.
They had all that food that they had to throw away, right? I remember like seeing Ezra Holbrook talking about that at was it Laurel Thirst? And he said, yeah, we threw away thousands of dollars of food because, we ramped up. We had no food in there. Ramped up,
Wow.
got food that was going to spoil.
Wow.
And I would imagine people that are out there doing other gigs might say, I can't imagine doing X, Y, or Z for a living. Can't imagine, and
Yeah.
grass is, I'm not, I don't want to say that it's always greener, but it's a different struggle for everybody.
Yeah.
I
That's
had,
very
I
true.
had, I had Lisa Schroeder on from Mother's Bistro. I love her. I had her on the show, and we talked a lot about her decision to shut Mother's down. Everybody assumed that Mother's was closed down because of the rioting and protesters. And she said, that's not it at all. We boarded up our windows because we shut down during COVID. We felt like it was an unsafe place. We weren't going to make enough of a difference in our business to do takeout,
Yeah.
and so delivery and takeout in our business wasn't a real viable option. And we felt like if we could get the pandemic assistance to pay our people while they were laid off,
Yeah.
we'd rather do that, keep people safe. The windows were boarded up just because of the protests, and they were able to put really cool murals where they could identify and address their important issues, which was
Yeah.
awesome. So I loved having her on here and talking about it. But like anything else, man, independent business owners of all kinds are struggling, and hopefully this is coming to the end soon, so that they can get back in business and people can start making their money again, so they can come out and support the Damn Straight at venues. So hit thedamnstraightband.com, and you can learn more about Brian's his independent gig. I was going to say solo gig, but it's a full band. So
It is.
who else is in that gig?
Brandon He2 on bass,
Okay.
Glenn Hoover on guitar, and Ron Tuttle on drums.
Oh, Ron's great too, man. That's awesome, man.
For sure.
Good band.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it's happening soon. So in the meantime, if you feel the identity slipping away, give me a call.
All right.
We'll just like be each other's shoulders if you want to.
Appreciate it.
I'd love to have you chime in when Foxworth is on next Wednesday.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Then you can tell stories on when he's able to defend himself. Right? So, But
Yeah.
listen, Brian Harris, I love and respect the heck out of you, man. I'm so glad to see you. I'm
Thanks,
glad.
Kevin. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's great to see you, to talk to you again.
Yeah, blessing, man.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for chatting. I will be if you go to youtube.com/all access live with Kevin Rankin, you can see that I've got a bunch of other guests coming up. A fun one next week besides Brian Foxworth is Stella Parton, Dolly Parton's sister, who's an incredible singer-songwriter, and she's got a record label. And Darby Mills from the Headpins. Do you remember Headpins back in the day? They were a Canadian band. And that's a guilty pleasure of mine. It was a
I know the
Canadian.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, she had this ripping voice. Darby was incredible. She's a Canadian icon, and so now she's up in rural Canada, and she's got her own project. So we'll have her on it next week as well. So you can see this episode again rebroadcast at 7 on Facebook, and if you go to accesskevin.com, I'll have it archived there as well. If you haven't subscribed, please do so now. And thanks again to Brian Harris. I appreciate you being here, buddy.
Likewise. Thanks.